A black belt challenged a black woman to a fight as a prank. Her response left the entire gym in awe. A black belt instructor summoned a humble black woman for a sparring challenge, intent on turning her into the subject of ridicule within the dojo. Yet, he could never have anticipated that such a choice would cast a profound silence over the entire dojo. For there are moments when the most reserved souls harbor within them mysteries that could leave the world in awe. In that moment, Ethan Wallace stood on the precipice of an unforgettable lesson. One should refrain from forming opinions about an individual based solely on their outward appearance. Danielle Carter eased the heavy glass door of Valor Martial Arts Center ajar, the gentle creak of her well-loved sneakers resonating against the gleaming wooden floor. The aroma of sweat mingled with herbal oils, and the palpable tension of effort and perseverance enveloped her, prompting an instinctive deep breath as she crossed the threshold into a realm that felt both familiar and yet perpetually unsettling to her heart. Each week, she arrived at this place to collect her daughter, Imani, following her martial arts class. Yet today, for some inexplicable reason, her heart pulsed with a slightly languid rhythm, a departure from its usual tempo. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over the green-matted training floor, where a throng of students engaged in their practice, their shouts mingling with labored breaths and the resounding thuds of feet striking the ground. In the corner of the room, Danielle's gaze was drawn to her daughter, 16-year-old Imani, as she performed a series of swift and exacting movements. Despite her small frame being soaked in perspiration, her eyes gleamed with intensity and fervor. Upon catching sight of her, Danielle offered a gentle, subtle smile that spoke volumes in its softness. "Hi, Mom!" Imani exclaimed, her voice bright as she spotted Danielle, waving with enthusiasm. Her face radiated with joy, her cheeks aglow from the exertion of the workout. Danielle returned the gesture, her eyes sparkling with warmth. At 38, Danielle possessed the demeanor of a reserved woman. Her face was bare of makeup, and her black curly hair, streaked with gray, was tied back neatly. She donned a worn t-shirt and aged sweatpants, a silhouette that garnered no notice from the parents lined along the wall. She retrieved her phone to peruse work emails, yet her eyes remained fixed on the training floor. A sharp cry jolted Danielle, prompting her to glance upward. Across the way, Coach Ethan Wallace was guiding a cadre of advanced students in their training. Tall and muscular in a pristine white GI, adorned with a gleaming black belt, Ethan radiated a confidence that teetered on the edge of arrogance. Yet, Danielle found it impossible to overlook the irritation that flickered across his face each time his gaze fell upon the students of color. "Hello, Andre. My focus is on teaching martial arts, not on babysitting duties." Ethan's voice cut through the air, sharp and dripping with derision. A handful of uncomfortable laughs echoed among the surrounding students, yet Danielle unmistakably perceived the sorrow and pain reflected in the gaze of young Andre, a small black boy who had just faced reprimand before the entire class. Danielle's brow furrowed ever so slightly. This was not the first occasion on which she had observed unmistakable indications of bias emanating from Ethan. The piercing gazes, the relentless scrutiny directed at students of color, while their white counterparts received gentle encouragement, even absolution for their missteps. Imani had always kept her grievances to herself, yet Danielle was acutely aware that her daughter had faced comparable hardships. She sensed it in the stillness that surrounded her. Imani lowered her gaze after each class. Coach Ethan maintains a rigorous approach, yet it is precisely this discipline that enables students here to achieve their belts more swiftly than elsewhere. A nearby parent leaned in, sharing a hushed comment with the individual beside them. The other responded with a gentler tone. "Yet my child continually expresses that he feels he is constantly measured against his white peers, despite his equal capabilities." Danielle absorbed every word, yet chose to remain quiet. Every word pierced her heart like a blade. She clenched the phone tightly for a moment, then let her tension ease away. She was merely here to collect her child. She wished to maintain the tranquility of the class, avoiding any disruption or unwanted attention. Despite the tempest raging within her, she opted for silence. Yet, the glance Ethan cast at Imani as the girl approached her, that smirk laced with mockery, seemed to carry an unmistakable challenge. "Today, my mom coach praised my kicking speed." Imani radiated joy, her grip firm on her belt. Danielle smiled, gently pushing a damp lock of hair away from her daughter's forehead. "That's wonderful, my dear. This evening, I shall prepare your beloved dish." They strolled out together, linked by the arm, while Ethan's icy gaze lingered behind, a mute challenge following in their wake. Danielle sensed it unmistakably. Though she refrained from glancing back, she was acutely aware of Ethan's self-satisfied smirk. Yet, she remained silent. She walked on, her daughter's hand clasped firmly in hers, as a quiet storm began to brew within her heart, one she had yet to discover the moment it would burst forth. The following day, having wrapped up her work ahead of schedule, Danielle chose to make her way to the martial arts center a little earlier than usual. Imani's mother, without revealing her intentions, sought to quietly observe the class. Her aim extended beyond merely watching her daughter train. She yearned to grasp the true nature of Coach Ethan Wallace's treatment of his students, particularly those of color, including her own child. She chose a subtle corner at the rear of the room, where the light barely penetrated, and quietly watched. The dojo buzzed with its familiar energy, filled with sharp shouts, the rhythmic pounding of feet against the floor, and the heavy breaths of children striving to surpass their limits. Yet, within the rhythm of those constant motions, Danielle started to perceive subtle discrepancies that tugged at her heartstrings. In the heart of the mat, Ethan, clad in an immaculate white GI, devoid of any crease, moved with purpose, his keen gaze sweeping over each student. "Andre, how often must I remind you? Another misstep, perhaps? Do it over, or just stand there until nightfall," his voice hissed coldly, directed straight at the young black boy grappling with a high kick. Andre's face turned a deep shade of crimson, his shoulders quivered ever so slightly, yet he persevered in his attempt to replicate the move. Right beside him, a boy named Liam was engaged in the same drill, his technique noticeably less refined. Yet, Ethan offered a gentle pat on his shoulder and spoke softly, "It's okay, Liam. Take your time, you'll get it." Danielle's hands were tightly clenched in her lap, the favoritism glaringly evident. She surveyed her surroundings, catching the approving smiles and nods from several white mothers directed at Ethan for his commendable strictness. Yet, in a different corner, a small group of parents of color gathered, their expressions marked by tension and weight. Among them was the mother of Tasha Andre. Tasha's gaze was locked onto her son, a wellspring of anguish reflected in her eyes, yet she chose silence, perhaps reluctant to interrupt her child's learning, or perhaps having become so familiar with injustice that her voice had faded into the background. Danielle glanced over her shoulder to meet her daughter's gaze. Imani immersed herself in her practice, her expression glowing with unwavering focus. However, mere moments later, Ethan erupted, "Imani, do you really believe that kind of kick will secure you a green belt next month? Do you believe this is merely a game?" Imani halted abruptly, her gaze expanding in shock, the spark within her eyes extinguished. She gave a slight nod, biting her lip to suppress her feelings, and made another attempt. Danielle recognized that expression, the one that spoke of the burden of exerting double the effort merely to receive a fraction of the equity deserved. Soft murmurs started to circulate among the line of parents. "Coach Wallace's strictness is what lends this place its distinctive edge," as someone remarked. The individual beside them inclined their head in agreement. "If we indulge them, how can we discern who is genuinely capable?" With each word, Danielle experienced a sharp ache in her chest. She acknowledged the necessity of discipline, yet what Ethan was cultivating was not discipline at all, it was a blend of arrogance, favoritism, and prejudice. "Imani, please be swift, we can't afford to linger any longer." Ethan let out a low growl, his gaze unwavering. Imani tightened her fists, resolutely repeating the maneuver. In her daughter's eyes, Danielle perceived a subtle bitterness lurking beneath the surface. The girl possessed strength, yet Danielle understood profoundly how such words could silently undermine a child's confidence, often without the awareness of the adults around them. As the final bell rang, Imani silently collected her belongings. The cheerful demeanor of yesterday had vanished. With her head bowed, she approached her mother in silence. Danielle encircled her arm around her daughter's shoulders. Her presence alone conveyed warmth and strength, rendering words unnecessary. Before departing the dojo, Danielle cast a final glance at Ethan, as their gazes intertwined. Within him, indifference had vanished, replaced by a smirk that danced on the edge of challenge and disdain. That gaze appeared to inquire, "So what action will you take in response?" Danielle met the gaze with a calm yet steely intensity, devoid of trembling or hatred, embodying instead the peculiar silence of a woman intimately acquainted with nameless battles. She understood that if this persisted, it would not only be Imani, but countless other children who would bear the scars within. In that instant, a singular truth crystallized in her mind. The silence of today, if it persists, will inevitably transform into the complicity of tomorrow. Should Ethan muster the audacity to challenge her once more, she would stand her ground unwaveringly. On Saturday afternoon, the ambience at Valor Martial Arts Center felt distinctly different from the norm. The students formed a wide circle around the central training mat, while parents gathered on either side, their expressions a blend of curiosity and eager anticipation. At the center, Ethan Wallace loomed with his characteristic commanding presence, his gaze sweeping over the crowd as though he were poised to take the spotlight, ready to dazzle. "Hello everyone," Ethan began, his voice resonating with clarity as he raised a hand to beckon silence. "Today, I feel the urge to embark on a slightly unconventional path." A handful of parents shared quiet laughter, familiar with his model training sessions and his theatrical displays of authority. Danielle lingered at the rear alongside Imani, her gaze locked onto Ethan, an unshakable instinct whispering that trouble was imminent. "Today, we shall present a brief demonstration, allowing everyone to witness the distinction that sets a professional fighter apart." Ethan paused, his eyes scanning the circle of students, parents, and outsiders, as the atmosphere began to change. Every gaze was fixed on Ethan, anticipation hanging in the air as they awaited the name he would utter. With a sly grin, Ethan pivoted and directed his finger right at Danielle. "Miss Carter, Imani's mother, you visit us every week, don't you? Perhaps you haven't yet ventured into the world of martial arts, but today might just be the perfect opportunity to explore it." The room was enveloped in a heavy silence, whispers began to ripple through the air, and a few students chuckled, convinced it was all just a jest. Yet, as they beheld the haughty smirk adorning Ethan's visage, it dawned on them that he was utterly earnest. Danielle sensed Imani's delicate fingers grip hers with a newfound intensity. "Mom, please don't," the girl implored, her voice trembling with concern. Danielle rested her hand on her daughter's shoulder, offering a gentle pat, her expression serene. Ethan advanced, his tone becoming increasingly daring. "Fear not, Imani, I shall tread lightly. This serves as a reminder that not all are suited for the mat." Danielle inhaled deeply. Her heart pulsed languidly, yet it was devoid of warmth. She faced Ethan, her gaze steady and unyielding. "Are you seeking a showcase to highlight your skills?" she inquired, her tone unwavering and distinct. "I have no desire to decline, yet should I consent, there is one stipulation I must insist upon." The dojo was enveloped in a profound silence. Ethan arched an eyebrow. "Ah, a stipulation? Proceed." "Should you emerge victorious, I shall concede my ignorance regarding martial arts." "As you suggested," Danielle remarked, her voice steady and resolute. "However, should I emerge victorious in this moment, before the students and their parents, you will be compelled to issue a public apology for all that you have said and done to the children present here. And not only to me, but to the students of color whom you've treated unjustly." Soft murmurs began to ripple through the space. Ethan erupted in laughter, a boisterous and derisive sound that filled the air. "Are you truly serious? Do you truly believe you have a fighting chance? Are you aware of my identity?" Danielle remained silent. She met his gaze with an unsettling calmness, as though she had already unraveled every secret he held. A handful of white parents chuckled dismissively, while the parents of color remained quietly taken aback. Yet, a spark of hope ignited in their eyes. Ethan faced the crowd, his arms outstretched in a gesture of fervent engagement. "Indeed, quite satisfactory. Should Miss Carter desire a demonstration, we shall ensure it is one that lingers in memory. On the morrow. Here it is." Once the throng had ebbed away, Imani grasped her mother's hand tightly, her complexion ashen. "Mother, there's no need for you to go through with this. I am well." Danielle lowered herself, gazing intently into her daughter's eyes. "Imani, there are moments when silence is no longer an option. I am well. I am fully aware of my actions." As the night deepened and Imani drifted into slumber, Danielle found herself in solitude within the living room. She pulled open a weathered drawer, revealing fragments of a history she had long sought to conceal. At the bottom, nestled gently within a tattered cloth, lay a black and silver MMA championship belt, its surface marked by the passage of time, accompanied by a handful of aged photographs. In a striking photograph, a young woman with cascading curls and an icy gaze raised the belt triumphantly above her head, surrounded by a chorus of exuberant cheers. Underneath the image lay a worn caption. "Rebecca, the specter of the wind, a tempest brews. 3. World champion of all time." Danielle, previously recognized as Rebecca Storm, softly rested her hand on the belt, her fingers quivering as they glided over the scratches worn smooth by the passage of time. The familiar ache surged forth, conjuring the memory of her brother Jordan's voice, calling her one final time amidst the relentless rain, his excitement palpable as he promised to be there, cheering her on for the most significant battle of her career. Yet he never arrived. A car accident had claimed his life, extinguishing Danielle's indomitable spirit in its wake. She had crumpled in the locker room, turning her back on triumph and the path of her career. Since that time, she had adopted a new name, abandoned the ring, and embraced a serene existence with her daughter. No one was aware of her history, and she had never wished to discuss it. Yet, in that moment, Ethan had unwittingly grazed the surface of a long-buried scar. Not due to his insults towards her, but rather because of the way he demeaned children such as Imani and Andre. Danielle shut her eyes, inhaling deeply. On the morrow, she would make her way back to the dojo, not merely as a mother, but as an ethereal breeze, a quiet tempest. This time, she was determined to prevail. The following afternoon, the warm sunlight poured through the expansive glass windows of the Valor Martial Arts Center, creating a delicate sheen upon the blue training mats. The dojo lay in an unusual hush, a palpable tension hanging in the air as if all present were collectively holding their breath, waiting for the moment to unfold. From youthful students to seasoned parents, all gathered closely, their gazes locked onto the center of the mat where Ethan Wallace loomed, his stance exuding confidence and a hint of arrogance. Across the expanse of the mat, Danielle Carter made her entrance. Without the GI or any protective gear, I found myself clad in a worn t-shirt and aged sweatpants, just like any other day. Her dark, curly hair was elegantly gathered, her complexion untouched by makeup, and her eyes serene and profound, reminiscent of a tranquil lake awaiting a tempest. Silence enveloped the room. Even the most loquacious students could only muster a whisper. They had grown accustomed to perceiving that woman as a mere silhouette among the line of parents. Today, she would become the unexpected focal point of everything. Ethan advanced a few steps, a smirk playing on his lips. "Are you certain about this? I will still offer you the opportunity to reconsider." Danielle held her posture with confidence, her eyes steady and resolute. "Never have I felt such unwavering certainty." Ethan offered a playful shrug before pivoting to face the crowd. "As promised, we shall now proceed with a brief demonstration." A professional in contrast to the devoted mother, he remarked with a hint of dryness. "I assure you, I will take it gently." Gentle laughter floated through the air from a handful of white parents, while the students of color remained quiet, their gazes brimming with hope, as if they could feel that a significant moment was on the horizon. Ethan began his routine with dazzling kicks and swift movements, resembling a captivating performance rather than a genuine contest. He edged closer to Danielle, delivering kicks that halted mere inches from her face, showcasing his remarkable speed and precision. Danielle made a subtle shift, her body leaning ever so slightly to the left or right, betraying not a hint of panic. Her gaze tracked his every motion, serene to the edge of iciness. Imani poised herself at the brink of the mat, her hands balled into tight fists. Her eyes brimmed with concern, yet as she observed her mother's steady, resolute demeanor, a transformation stirred within her. What once was fear transformed into a profound sense of admiration and unwavering belief. "Will you not rise to the challenge?" Ethan let out a low growl, his impatience simmering beneath the surface. He unleashed a more powerful, nearer kick this time, one imbued with genuine force, no longer merely a part of a demonstration. Danielle evaded the blow with effortless grace, gliding aside like a whisper of wind, unperturbed. She responded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I perceived this as a showcase presented by an expert. I eagerly await the opportunity to witness the full breadth of your talents." A soft murmur swept across the gathering, like a gentle breeze stirring the leaves. Ethan's cheeks flushed, his gaze ignited with fury. "Do you truly believe that evading indefinitely equates to victory?" With a low growl, he surged forward, his pace quickening in an instant. The punches, the kicks, the sweeps, they transcended mere spectacle, they bore weight and purpose. His frustration mingled with disappointment, giving rise to a deepening sense of unease. Yet, Danielle maintained her composure effortlessly. Every one of her evasions was executed with impeccable timing, precision, and an air of incredibility. It seemed she possessed an uncanny ability to anticipate his every action before it unfolded. The crowd fell into a hushed silence. This was no longer a trivial display. This was a wholly unique experience. The entire room seemed to pause, anticipation hanging thick in the air as Ethan executed a spinning kick. He once claimed that one of his signature moves was utterly impossible to evade. As his legs surged toward Danielle with remarkable speed, she leaned just a fraction, her hand brushing against his leg in a subtle, almost ethereal redirection. Ethan's whole form lurched, thrown off kilter. He spun too far, lost his grip on balance, and tumbled face-first onto the mat, the world around him falling into a hushed stillness. Imani lifted her hands to her lips, her eyes brimming with astonishment. A handful of parents let out soft gasps. The students who had previously mocked now gazed, their eyes wide with astonishment, exchanging silent glances with one another. Danielle remained motionless, her gaze unwaveringly locked on Ethan. Ethan remained still for a moment, breathless, grappling with the bewildering events that had just unfolded. He gradually lifted himself, his gaze sweeping across the room. Every eye was fixed on him, but the admiration had faded. At that moment, all that remained was a profound sense of shock and deep disappointment. Danielle advanced a single step, neither with arrogance nor with derision. A serene yet unsettling aura. "I hope," she said slowly, "you now understand that martial arts are not about humiliation, not about showboating or discrimination. They are about mastering oneself and respecting others." A hush enveloped the room. Suddenly, a wave of applause erupted from an unseen source. Gentle in the beginning, then others began to participate. And soon the entire dojo was filled with students. Parents applauding with a resounding force, reminiscent of a storm's roar. Gone were the days when Ethan's reputation held any weight. They had glimpsed the truth. Before them stood the embodiment of true strength. Imani dashed ahead, launching herself into her mother's embrace, tears cascading down her cheeks. "Mom, you are the most resilient individual I have ever encountered." Danielle cradled her daughter tenderly, murmuring gentle words into her ear. "For you, I shall remain voiceless no longer." As the echoes of applause lingered in the air, Danielle extended her hand to Imani, assisting her rise from the mat. The girl's eyes, still tinged with red, now sparkled with a newfound pride she had never experienced before. Danielle knelt, tenderly arranging her daughter's hair, and murmured gently, "It has been witnessed at last. No further words are necessary." In that instant, Ethan Wallace remained seated on the floor, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze fixed vacantly on the mat. His face had shed its familiar air of confidence, leaving only shock and confusion in its wake. In that fleeting moment, Ethan may have experienced, for the very first time, the deep humiliation he had frequently, whether by chance or design, imposed upon others. Danielle pivoted gracefully, making her way toward Ethan. Neither with contempt nor with resentment. She remained poised, her stance unwavering, her gaze steady yet determined. "Mr. Wallace," she declared, her voice resonating throughout the entire dojo. "The contest has concluded. Praise is not a necessity for me. Yet, there remains one aspect of the promise." Ethan raised his gaze, locking eyes with her. Within them, he perceived not triumph, but a profound message. Justice requires no loud proclamations, it simply seeks acknowledgement. He rose deliberately, brushing the dust from his hands, and then moved to the heart of the mat. In an instant, the crowd was enveloped in silence. The laughter had vanished. Only the rhythm of breath and lingering gazes persisted. Ethan's voice emerged, hoarse and raspy. He took a deep breath, steeling himself before pressing on. "I wish to extend my sincerest apologies, not only to Miss Carter but to every student and parent present in this gathering. I allowed my own arrogance and prejudice to obscure my capacity for fair judgment." He faced the students of color, who were gathered at the edge of the mat. Andre and Tasha, the figures who had once weathered the storm of silence. "I acknowledge my unfairness towards you, I recognize my mistakes. An apology may not undo the damage I've caused, yet I vow to transform my ways starting now." Some stared in astonishment, while others exchanged glances filled with incredulity. Yet, within Ethan's gaze, for the very first time, there existed not a trace of pride, but rather a profound and unvarnished honesty. Danielle gave a slight nod. She remained silent, offering no further words. In that stillness, she conveyed her acceptance of the apology, not due to the simplicity of forgiveness, but because it was the sole path to a fresh start. A timid student was the first to voice their thoughts. "Coach, I appreciate your courage in acknowledging your mistake." And as if summoned by an unseen force, the applause surged once more, not in celebration of a victor or a vanquished, but in honor of something truly extraordinary, the bravery to acknowledge one's own missteps. Tasha, the mother of Andre, approached Danielle with a quiet determination. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Thank you," she expressed, "not merely for the battle, but for championing all of us." Danielle beamed with a warm smile. Every child deserves support in their battles, solitude should never be their companion. Following that day, the ambience at Valor Martial Arts transformed remarkably. Ethan had transformed from the coach who merely raised his voice. He became a keen listener, an astute observer, and above all, he dedicated himself to self-improvement, progressing gradually, one step at a time. He initiated a series of discussions centered around the theme of fairness in sports, extending invitations to both parents and students to join in the conversation. During one of these gatherings, it was Danielle who rose to recount her journey. "None of us were born perfect," she said, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, landing on Imani in the front row, "but we can choose to be kind. Martial arts transcends the mere act of overcoming opponents. It revolves around the art of self-mastery and the unwavering stance against injustice." Her words reverberated throughout the space, embedding themselves in the consciousness of all who were there. In the aftermath of the match, numerous students of color, who had previously been hesitant and quiet, started to carry themselves with newfound confidence during training. They held the conviction that respect was their due, not due to the color of their skin, but rather as a result of their sincere endeavors. Parents started to voice their inquiries, stepping away from the shadows of silence. Whispers of Danielle's reputation began to circulate. She received invitations from other dojos to share her insights. The local newspapers clamored to interview the mother who dared to confront a coach, effectively silencing the entire dojo, yet she turned them all away. She confided in Tasha that fame was not her pursuit. "I long for my daughter to inhabit a world where she can embrace her true self without fear." One afternoon, as the mother and daughter departed the dojo, Imani grasped her mother's hand firmly and whispered, "You know, Mom, you've always been my hero. I had never witnessed you take your place on the mat until now." Danielle gazed at her, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "Darling, true strength lies not in the force of kicks or punches. It lies in the way you ascend when doubt surrounds you. By clinging to your kindness, even in the face of a world that opposes you, you have secured a victory." The pair strolled onward, bathed in the warm, golden light of the setting sun that spilled gently over the narrow path beside the dojo. Behind them, through the glass doors, Ethan lingered, not to oversee, but to reflect. A fragment of his being had transformed, and he recognized that the ache of loss, though excruciating, was the most essential catalyst of his existence. As the day drew to a close, enveloped in a serene stillness, the teachings of Danielle Carter lingered in the air, resonating long after the clamor had subsided. True strength lies not in physical prowess, nor in accolades or positions of power. Genuine strength lies in the bravery to uphold what is just. Thus, the narrative of Danielle Carter reaches its conclusion, transforming from a mother ridiculed in a dojo to a figure who compelled an entire training system to re-evaluate its understanding of strength and respect. If this tale resonated with you, and you haven't yet joined our community, we invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support fuels our passion to share more stories like this one. Just, heartfelt, and brimming with optimism. Until we meet again on the next adventure, where the extraordinary emerges from the everyday, and the world takes heed. As you anticipate the next tale, I've curated a selection of videos that I believe will capture your interest. They await your presence just beside you, wishing you a day filled with beauty, and may your true value always be acknowledged.